Picture an early dawn in Vatican City, long before the crowds arrive. The lamps still glow against ancient stone, and the city feels suspended in time. Every archway, every corner, every whisper of history poised on some grand secret. Now imagine Pope Leo XIV, dressed in a simple black cassock rather than the regal vestments you might expect, stepping quietly through the echoing corridors of the Apostolic Palace. There's an urgency in his pace, as though he's chasing, or perhaps being led by, a mystery that's been waiting for him since well before his birth. The early morning hush swallows his footsteps, and he slips away from the usual papal apartments, heading toward the vast Vatican Library archives, a place where centuries of records are stacked with meticulous care. But the Pope is not in search of a well-documented relic or a famous papal bull today. He carries a single clue, an image he keeps seeing in his mind. A circular room lit only by candles, sealed by something he can't yet name. This image haunts him, visiting his dreams night after night since he assumed the papacy. The same phrase keeps surfacing, the time of the double light. He has no idea what it means. He arrives at a dusty section of the archives, home to boxes and scrolls no one has touched for decades. Something compels him to run his fingers along the shelves. It's almost as if he can feel a pulse in the wood, a quiet nudge from beyond the everyday. Suddenly, he spots a small wooden box marked Miscellanea Ecclesiastica 1920s. It seems out of place, too small, too plain, and somehow too intentional. The label is faded, but a second inscription catches his eye, for Petra and Fons only. That jolts him. Petra, Fons. They're simple Latin words for rock and spring, but somehow they ring in his mind with the resonance of an ancient bell. He gently lifts the lid. Inside, he finds a fragile yellowed envelope sealed with a strange symbol, a triangle enclosing an eye. Alongside it lie two objects bundled in cloth, a brass key and something else metallic he doesn't recognize at first. He pulls them out carefully and sets them aside, drawn to the envelope. Inside it, a parchment dated July 1925, is covered with official language and a signature purporting to be from Pope Pius XI. Yet it's not in any official index. He reads the text with growing fascination. By order of our Holy Father, the chamber is to be sealed, not merely locked but walled off entirely, until the time of the double light. Let no hand, consecrated or profane, disturb its threshold. The two keys shall be given to Petra and Fons. No other shall open. The fire shall remain veiled until the voice within is called to answer. On the back of this parchment is a faint sketch, a map showing an unfamiliar corridor running behind the Scola Regia, the grand staircase of the Apostolic Palace. But none of these revelations shake Leo XIV quite like what he sees at the bottom of the document. There, next to a line indicating it was signed and witnessed by, are two pre-printed names, Leo XIV and Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. The ink is cracked with age, it's obviously old, and yet it names him a man elected pope in 2025, right here in 1925. His mind reels. This is all impossible. He fights the urge to doubt his own eyes. Instead, he summons the one person he trusts most in the Vatican, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagale, his name spelled differently in the strange document, but close enough to be unsettling. Tagale arrives breathless and anxious. Before Leo can say much, the cardinal sets a small cloth pouch on the table. From it, he produces a matching brass key, nearly identical to the one Leo found, sent to him anonymously right after the Pope's election. The only note attached to it read, "The double light has come. Petra and Fons must enter." That was it. They look at each other, both unsettled, both oddly excited. Tagale wonders if Petra and Fons refer to him and the Pope. Petra, the rock. Fons, the spring. Nicknames for two men tasked with guiding the church. One from deeply rooted tradition, the other from a wellspring of new perspectives. Together, they piece together the puzzle. These keys must open something. And according to the 1925 parchment, this sealed chamber of reflection lies somewhere behind the Scola Regia. They decide to search immediately, wearing the simplest black cassocks to avoid attention. They slip through side corridors with minimal security, passing dusty statues and silent tapestries. The old map guides them to a wooden panel near the great staircase. Behind it, they discover an abandoned maintenance shaft leading into a cramped stone passage. The air grows thick, and the two men exchange glances. This feels more like stepping into a medieval legend than exploring the Vatican in the 21st century. Before long, they come upon an iron gate engraved with a stylized key split into two halves. It's obviously meant for two keys, one on each side. Leo and Tagale insert their brass keys simultaneously, and the gate swings open with surprising ease. Beyond, the corridor widens into a small circular rotunda illuminated by a faint, eerie light. At the center is a simple wooden door with no handle, just a narrow vertical slit. Chiseled into the floor is a Latin inscription. The word opens the unknown. They try typical prayers, Pater Noster, verses from Scripture, names of saints. Nothing happens. At last, Leo whispers the ancient form of Jesus, and the door, as if gently nudged by an invisible hand, opens inward. A shiver passes between them. They step inside. The chamber is surprisingly stark. Empty stone walls curve into a dome above, and at the center stands a modest altar and kneeler in a single wooden chair. Atop the altar lies a dusty gold chalice and a large, ancient-looking book tightly secured with 3 iron clasps. On the wall behind the altar, a symbol stands out, a triangle encasing a flame. Beneath it, an Italian inscription reads, "Only the fire speaks when the word is ignored." Another older engraving in the floor says, "They will return again." The combination of messages fills the room with an uneasy hush. Leo unclasps the book's iron locks. The cover bears a scratched version of that same triangle and flame symbol, but now enclosed in a circle. He flips through the first dozen pages blank, until page 13. Suddenly, lines of text appear in modern Italian, as though scrawled by an unseen hand. When the time of the double light arrives and Petra and Fawns unite in silence, let the record begin from this page onward. Listen to what you hear. Write what you see. Below this text, 2 names fade into view: Giorgio Leo, Luis Antonio Tag, half-formed words that seem to reference the popes and cardinals' names. Then the text continues, "Do not be afraid. You are not judged, you are reminded. One of you doubted. One of you wept." Tagale's hands shake. He admits he's the one who wept, because he feared God had stopped speaking to his church. At that moment, his own words appear on the page, branded into the parchment as if by a hot iron. A disembodied voice fills the chamber, resonant yet unmistakably human, saying they will understand only when they listen without fear. The flame symbol above the altar glows, and the atmosphere feels charged with a presence impossible to define. Leo can't move. It feels as though a gentle hand has pressed on his shoulder, urging him to stay calm. Then, just as abruptly as it came, the presence recedes. The book flips a page by itself. New words appear. Return tomorrow alone. A chill sweeps the room. The instruction is clear. Only one of them is meant to come back. They return to their normal surroundings, hearts pounding. As Leo stands in the open-air courtyard, he sees something flicker in the Vatican gardens. A small, floating flame that dances like a firefly, but with a silent gravity. He steps closer. A voice of memory murmurs in his mind, reminding him of a time he was a young seminarian, racked with doubt, wondering if God had fallen silent in a busy, modern world. The flame's presence is soothing, and it leaves a faint scorch mark on the stone that reads, "Tomorrow he will see, and you must not speak back." Meanwhile, Tagale returns to his quarters to find a folded note on his desk, reading, "Return at dawn. Come alone. Do not question what you see." He nearly drops the note in shock. The same voice that spoke in the chamber spoke in his dream last night, telling him a truth about himself he'd long kept hidden. Shaken but resolute, Tagale rises before dawn. He slips away quietly, returning to the sealed chamber. Shockingly, the iron gate and the wooden door open for him without keys or even a word. Inside, the book is open, the chalice is filled, and the altar glows with a light that burns but does not consume. A voice, soundless, yet undeniably present, asks Tagale why he came. He answers simply, "Because I asked where you were," recalling a personal moment of crisis in the aftermath of Typhoon Yolanda, when he questioned God's silence amid suffering. The flame on the altar intensifies, and the rear wall becomes a living mosaic. Tagale sees scenes of a modern Last Supper in which he himself appears, a cathedral where worshippers kneel among flames that do not harm, and a vision of Pope Leo with a face like light. He also sees the very chamber they stand in, crowded with hundreds of people in silent reverence. A voice whispers, "You are watching memory, what has always been. You just forgot." As the mosaic fades, Tagale notices a white porcelain key in his hand, engraved with the words, "For the door that doesn't open." The book seals itself. On the cover, fresh lettering appears. "Next time, bring no questions, only obedience." That evening, Pope Leo discovers an identical white key beside his brass one, labeled for the voice that doesn't speak. Later that night, in a remote corner of the Vatican known as the Tower of the Winds, Pope Leo feels drawn to a massive, ancient door he's rarely seen used. This time, the door is unlocked, responding effortlessly to the white key. Inside, the air shimmers with a strange luminescence. 7 pillars form a circle, and at the center stands a tall mirror. Leo's reflection is missing. Instead, he sees Cardinal Tagle kneeling in another unknown room, murmuring, "I am ready." Then the mirror ripples like water and shows a descending staircase swallowed by darkness. On impulse, Leo extends his hand. The glass becomes liquid, swallowing his arm. Without a second thought, he steps through. He emerges into a vast, circular room with curved stone walls and no visible light source. Yet everything is perfectly illuminated. At the center stands a pedestal holding what appears to be a black iron crown shaped like worn thorns. Beneath it, a plaque reads, "For the one who does not wish to rule." Leo hesitates. He touches the crown and is overwhelmed by a vision. St. Peter's Square, filled with people crying out for God, engulfed by uncertainty, as flames and shouts echo across the city. In the vision, he stands on the balcony, trembling not in fear, but in profound empathy. A voice rumbles in his mind, "Listen." Suddenly, Tagale is there, too, stepping through the mirror from his side. A figure cloaked in living flame appears, speaking directly into their thoughts. "You will not understand, but you must remember. The time of silence is over. The time of voice has begun." Then, just as suddenly, the figure walks back through the mirror and vanishes. The 2 clergymen stand in stunned silence. At dawn the next day, Pope Leo cancels his schedule for 3 days. He and Tagale return to the Tower of the Winds, but the mirror is gone. They use their white keys on a hidden impression in the wall, which slides open, revealing a spiral staircase plunging deeper into the structure. Descending carefully, they discover another massive, circular chamber radiating a pure, gentle light. In its center, a low pedestal cradles a 3rd key, black and unadorned. As Leo picks it up, the walls emit a low hum, and faint carvings flicker across the stone. Images of modern cityscapes, 2 men holding keys, a 3rd key glowing. A voice resonates. The seal is broken. One will speak. One will kneel. What was hidden shall become voice. High above them, a round aperture opens to reveal a red-hued sky. They hear a single bell toll from St. Peter's Basilica. Moments later, more bells chime in unison, as though announcing a monumental event. That evening, Pope Leo summons a clandestine council of 7 individuals from across the globe. These 7 have long been rumored, a hidden council chosen by previous popes for extraordinary moments when a normal hierarchy would fail. They come because they received a coded phrase. The silence has turned to voice. Each arrives quietly, discreetly, an unmarked entrance near the apostolic palace. The next morning, Tagale leads them all back to the sealed altar chamber. The large book is open, text scrawling across its pages by invisible means. One of the council members, an elderly nun from Albania, reads aloud. When the fire speaks in silence, when the keys are placed by hand, the veil shall lift from stone, and the anointed must kneel and not command. In a voice trembling with reverence, she adds, "It's time." Leo sets the black key at the foot of the altar. Tagale places his white key beside it. Immediately, the rear wall slides open, revealing a small, bare room containing a single wooden chair marked witness, carved with fire symbols. Tagale feels compelled to sit. A dense pressure fills the air, and he begins to speak in a voice that is as yet somehow ancient. The ones who listen shall be burdened. The ones who kneel shall rise in flame. The voice was never lost, only unheard. The time of unveiling has begun. As he speaks, a smaller book bearing St. Peter's seal rises from a hidden compartment. Leo carefully unseals it. The pages, nearly disintegrating with age, are covered in archaic script. One passage reads, "To the one who hears the voice when no one else does, you are the bridge between the keys. Guard what you see in silence until the bells ring without hands." Leo's eyes widen. The bells have already rung mysteriously. Tagale, eyes open but distant as if caught in a trance, says, "I know where the final door is." Then he slumps, exhaustion washing over him. The rest of the council stands in awed silence. The nun steps forward, removing a small, scorched stone fragment from her habit. She says she was born for this, explaining that her grandmother once spoke of a prophecy concerning a hidden altar. The stone, she claims, is a key in itself. Before dawn, they all gather again at a location not on any official Vatican map, just a bare hallway of marble. Tagale runs his hands along the wall until he finds a faint crack, like a scar. He presses the black key into that fissure, and the wall slides open, revealing a dark, spiraling corridor. They descend, the nun leading with her stone fragment glowing faintly, illuminating ancient inscriptions. Eventually, they reach a small, oval room with a warped iron crucifix. A metal plate at its base reads, "I burn for those who did not ask." At their feet is an iron hatch. The nun touches it with the scorched stone, and the hatch opens to reveal yet another staircase bathed in a pulsing glow. Descending, they enter what looks like a hidden amphitheater, layered like concentric circles. In the center stands a pedestal holding a golden ring. It looks like the fisherman's ring the Pope traditionally wears, except older and inscribed with Leo the 14th, as though bridging the first Pope Leo and the 14th. It's impossible, yet here it is. A massive mural lights up on the far wall. It shows a Pope, clearly Leo the 14th, walking barefoot with a wooden staff, leaving behind a crumbling basilica, heading into a vast desert. Above him, a cross burns in the sky, unconsumed. Tagale gasps. Recognizing this is a direct echo of the visions they've had. A voice from the very walls resounds. The stone has spoken. The voice is not chosen. It is awakened. You are the voice. Now speak. Leo steps forward, heart hammering in his chest, and takes the ring. It's warm to the touch, as though forged moments ago, and it slides perfectly onto his finger. He whispers in awe, "I will speak." At that exact instant, a hush descends over St. Peter's Square and the surrounding city. Security cameras and microphones malfunction in the basilica. A single ancient bell rings, then fades into silence. Within the hidden chamber, the stone pedestal beneath the ring cracks, releasing a scroll. It falls to the floor at Leo's feet. Unfurling it, he reads a record of a secret meeting from over a century ago. It describes 7 cardinals who saw identical visions of a future Pope Leo during a time of spiritual war, when the church would be hollowed out by fear and desperate for truth. The scroll explains that this new Leo would willingly leave the Vatican, drawn by a voice older than the world. Leo shuts his eyes, overwhelmed. The ring wasn't left for him to claim power. It was left so he would understand that true power is laid down. Then he notices something else. He's barefoot, though he doesn't remember removing his shoes. Tagale recognizes the significance, an echo of a prophecy from the Albanian nun's grandmother, who said, "The fire returns to the one who walks without shoes." Days later, a short and signed statement appears from the papal office. It reads only, "The voice of God is not always spoken from the balcony." It sends tremors through the Catholic world. News outlets scramble for explanations. People start sharing stories of inexplicable experiences, unexplained bell ringings in remote churches, a surge in spontaneous prayer gatherings. Some are unnerved by the ambiguity, while others feel an inexplicable hope. Then, an image goes viral. Pope Leo XIV spotted in Assisi, walking barefoot down a cobblestone street, leaning on a simple wooden staff. No papal vestments, no entourage. Local children come running, confused yet curious. One child tugs on his sleeve and asks, "Are you the Pope?" Leo smiles gently and replies, "I'm just a voice that finally spoke." The photo shows him surrounded by kids, smiling and at ease, a far cry from the majestic pomp of St. Peter's Basilica. Back in the hidden chamber, the council finds the scroll crumbling into dust. The iron crucifix in the oval room shifts, revealing a final inscription before turning to face the wall. It is finished. The three keys vanish, leaving only faint scorch marks on the altar and pedestal. It's as if whatever forces orchestrated these events have closed a chapter. That evening, Cardinal Tagale sits alone in his study, contemplating everything that's happened. He wonders if the Church, 2,000 years old, has just experienced a rebirth in secret, or if it was always there, waiting to be rediscovered. He recalls that final vision in the mosaic, a cathedral ablaze with flames that do not destroy, worshippers lost in reverent awe. Somehow, he senses that the Church is on the cusp of a new awakening, where the voice does not emanate from merely one man, but from a collective remembrance of what it means to walk in faith without fear. Within days, rumors swirl that Pope Leo intends to renounce many of the traditional trappings of power. Some accuse him of subverting the Church. Others hail him as the renewal they've yearned for. Leo's official staff at the Vatican can't confirm or deny his plans. Meanwhile, faithful Catholics worldwide gather in prayer vigils, sensing that monumental change lurks just beneath the surface. Strange coincidences multiply. Spontaneous gatherings of pilgrims at remote shrines, random church bells tolling without human intervention, renewed fervor among once lapsed faithful. Back in Rome, a swirl of tension clouds the corridors of the Vatican. Many wonder if the Pope has abandoned his duties. Others sense a tectonic shift in ecclesiastical authority. Yet the official papal press office remains silent. A single quote circulates, allegedly from Leo himself. "We were never meant to hide behind walls. We carry the Church within us, wherever we go." Behind the scenes, Tagale takes informal leadership of day-to-day Vatican operations, shepherding the Curia with a quiet, firm hand. He periodically revisits the hidden chambers, but each time, he finds them silent and still. The mysterious texts in the old book remain visible. Only now, they radiate a sense of completion, as though everything prophesied within has already been set in motion. Within a fortnight, the world sees another stirring image. Pope Leo XIV striding along a dusty road in southern Italy, flanked by refugees and migrant families. His bare feet are grimy with earth, and his dark ring glints in the sunlight. A journalist snaps a photo of him lifting a child onto his shoulders. When asked to comment, he says only, "I go where the voice calls." Critics lambaste his apparent disregard for Vatican protocol, but their protests do nothing to stem the growing tide of spiritual curiosity sparked by his unconventional journey. Back at the Vatican, archived records of previous popes are being re-examined. A few scholars in the secret archives uncover obscure references to a Leo XIV in manuscript from centuries past, odd mentions of a time of unveiling. They also find coded notations of various cardinal gatherings that happened in 1925, referencing the double light. It appears the entire tapestry of church history has been threaded with these hints, waiting for the right moment to surface. Cardinal Tagale, stepping into a more visible role now, addresses a crowd from the window once reserved for the Pope's Sunday Angelus. He delivers a surprising message about humility, about not clinging to earthly forms of authority. He says, "The church is not stone. It is the living faith of the people." As he speaks, viewers in multiple countries report hearing faint echoes of church bells in the background, though none of the local bells are actually ringing. Social media explodes with speculation. Is this coincidence or something more? Meanwhile, the nun from Albania gathers with the clandestine council members again, though privately. She confides that her grandmother predicted the man called Rock and the man called Spring would follow a voice beyond the threshold. She believes that threshold has been crossed. The council wonders how they'll fulfill their mission if the Pope remains away for so long, walking with the poor and seeking invisible doors. The nun smiles calmly. "He is fulfilling it now," she says. Reports trickle in. Sightings of Leo in places of suffering, an overcrowded hospital in Africa, a remote village in Latin America ravaged by storms, a refugee camp in the Middle East. Each time, he arrives unannounced, barefoot, carrying only a wooden staff and wearing the dark ring. He prays quietly with the sick, dines with the poor, disappears at dawn. Witnesses describe an aura of compassion so palpable that words feel secondary. The news channels call it the papal pilgrimage, but the Pope himself avoids cameras, offering no official statements. Within the Vatican walls, a gradual transformation begins. Priests and seminarians find the hidden altars more accessible. Something feels different, as if the entire institution is breathing out centuries of pent-up protocol. Devotion deepens among many, though a segment of the Curia grows anxious about where all this could lead. Yet no one can deny the resurgence of an earnest faith, a vivid sense that perhaps the divine is more active and near than they realized. In a public mass for Easter, celebrated by Tagale at St. Peter's Basilica, an unexpected moment occurs. As he raises the host, the main crucifix above the altar shimmers with a brief glow. Thousands of attendees gasp. It's subtle yet unmistakable, like fire passing through polished stone. When asked about it afterward, Tagale shakes his head in awe. "Perhaps it's the same light that guided us in those hidden chambers," he says quietly. People begin to call this entire phenomenon the time of the double light, referencing the original phrase that started Pope Leo on his quest. The Church experiences an uptick in confessions, conversions, and requests for religious life. Even non-believers express fascination. Documents from obscure archives are translated and published online, fueling debates about mystical traditions within Catholicism. Some warn of delusion, others of divine renewal, but the conversation continues to grow. Months pass. Pope Leo remains a pilgrim, forging a path of humility that confounds mainstream expectations of papal leadership. A rumor circulates that he may never return to the Vatican in the way popes historically do. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, an announcement arrives. A global prayer vigil is to be held in St. Peter's Square on Pentecost. Cardinal Tagle will preside, but the letter also suggests Pope Leo himself will be present, though it stops short of confirming he'll be there in person. Pentecost arrives. St. Peter's Square overflows with people. Thousands more follow on screens worldwide. The basilica bells ring in a steady pattern, then abruptly go silent. A hush descends over the crowd. Tagale steps out onto the balcony, accompanied by the 7 council members and the Albanian nun. The choir begins Veni Creator Spiritus. The prayerful atmosphere is thick with expectation. Midway through the chanting, the cameras pan to the edge of the square, where a figure appears barefoot, wearing a simple robe and leaning on a wooden staff. It's Pope Leo XIV, returning like a shepherd to his flock. He moves through the crowd with no security detail. People part before him in reverent silence. Some weep, some reach out to touch the hem of his garment. When he finally ascends the steps to the basilica, He and Tagale embrace as dear friends long separated. The Pope addresses the crowd with a simple statement: "I left to listen. Now I return to speak." In that moment, something akin to a gentle wind stirs the square, and the giant obelisk at its center seems momentarily bathed in an ethereal glow. Bells begin to ring again, this time from multiple churches across Rome, not in unison, but in a harmonic tapestry that envelopes the city. Television crews capture the scene, though their feeds flicker as if some unseen force briefly interrupts the signal. Leo takes off the dark ring, holds it up to the crowd, and says, "I carry this not as a symbol of rule, but as a memory of the voice." Then he slips it back on. "For so long," he continues, "we believe the silence was God's absence. But God never stopped speaking. We simply stopped listening." His words reach even those who watch from faraway continents, stirring hearts with a strange and powerful emotion that many describe afterward as hope tinged with awe. A sudden downpour breaks over the square, but no one scatters. Some stand arms raised to the sky, letting the rain mix with their tears. The Pope offers a final blessing. He does not dismiss the crowd. He simply smiles and says, "Go, and carry the voice you have heard." Then, as if guided by invisible hands, he walks back inside, Tagale and the council following. In the days that follow, church attendance surges in unlikely places. Interfaith dialogues flourish. In corners of the world rarely visited by Catholic officials, priests and lay ministers report a renewed vigor in their congregations. Even those outside the church speak of Pope Leo XIV as a moral beacon, a leader unafraid to embody humility in a time of global turmoil. Meanwhile, secret Vatican records are quietly made public in digital archives, revealing centuries of cryptic references to prophecies about a pope who would wander without crown and break the sealed doors. Media outlets try to piece together a coherent storyline from these fragments, but the narrative remains elusive, as if it's still unfolding. Analysts, scholars, and theologians debate whether any of this constitutes a miracle, a social movement, or a curiosity that will fade. But for those who experienced it firsthand, something irreversible has happened. Back in the hidden chambers, the old book remains perched on the altar. Council members revisit the space, finding new writing almost daily, as though it's tracking the church's pulse in real time. Some entries seem cryptic, visions of future gatherings, words of comfort in foreign languages. Others are simple messages of encouragement or challenge. Tagle reads one line aloud: "My people have found their ears. Will they find their hearts?" Word spreads that Pope Leo XIV may convene an unprecedented gathering, a synod designed not for bishops alone, but for all who have heard the voice. Cardinals across the globe brace themselves for changes that could reshape Catholicism. Public speculation runs wild. Will this be the beginning of a radical shift in the Church's power structures? Will the Pope remain on pilgrimage or resume a more traditional role? When asked by a journalist what he intends to do next, Pope Leo simply smiles and replies, "Listen, as we have always been called to do." The journalist is left speechless. In other times, such a cryptic answer might have provoked frustration, but now it seems to resonate with an undercurrent of spiritual awakening that's coursing through the world. Reports of private prayer circles, interdenominational dialogues, and even unusual phenomena, like the spontaneous ringing of bells, continue to surface. As the months roll on, the imagery of a barefoot pope, a hidden council, flaming symbols, and lost chambers becomes something akin to legend. Yet it's a legend unfolding in real time, tangibly altering the Church and the lives of believers and skeptics alike. History will likely record this period under many names: the time of the double light, the great unveiling, or even Leo's pilgrimage. Gradually, the Church adjusts to a pope who refuses to wield authority like a scepter. Strange as it is, more and more Catholics find solace in his humility, inspired to rediscover their own capacity to connect directly with God. At the same time, the grand structures of the Vatican continue to function, administering the world's largest religious institution. The tension between tradition and transformation remains, but for now, it seems balanced by the shared sense that something bigger than institutional order is at play. One evening, Pope Leo XIV walks again through a dim corridor in the Apostolic Palace. He pauses beside a fresco depicting St. Peter receiving the keys. For the first time in centuries, that image strikes him as incomplete. In his heart, he feels a soft conviction that the true meaning of keys isn't about locking power within the church, but about unlocking hearts, an invitation to an ongoing, collaborative conversation with the divine. He's joined by Cardinal Tagale, who places a comforting hand on Leo's shoulder. They stand in silence for a moment. Then Leo murmurs, "The time of silence is over." Tagale nods, finishing the thought. The time of voice has begun. They exchange a quiet smile, reflecting on the journey that started with those two brass keys and a hidden door, leading them both deeper than they ever imagined. Deeper into the mysteries of faith, the nature of power, and the abiding presence of God who speaks, always, to those willing to listen.